I have studied hypnosis and I worked as a developmental change
Oh,
coach for a number of years.
okay.
So that was a massive area for me. And something that people will say, like recommend a lot, is that you should journal your trades.
Mhm.
Like you should journal not just the logging of data, but you should journal how you feel before, during, and after the trade and stuff. And that just seems to have been something that everyone assumes to be the case and something that you need to do. But it's not. It's most certainly not the case because, like, and there's been countless studies have shown this. Like the most popular one is by a psychologist called James Pennebaker. The secret to the whole thing, and I think this is where hypnosis and stuff comes in to play, is that we have a toolkit which I think is underutilized, and that is the imagination. So
Mhm.
we can literally change our perspective of reality just by imagining something. And hypnosis is, in my opinion, the best way to amplify that whole experience.
That is super cool, and I've never ever spoken to a hypnotist before. Is it real? Because I know a lot of people watching are going to be thinking, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, don't believe that. Welcome back to another episode here at the Bespoke Funded Trader podcast. This episode is magical, to say the least, and probably one of the most interesting conversations that I have had so far. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and let's get straight into it. So could you please introduce yourself and just tell everyone a little bit about who you are and where you're from?
My name's David. I am 36 years young from Ireland.
Love that. So how did you get into trading?
I'm still relatively new to forex trading. So
Okay.
initially, way back in like 2010,
Mm.
I heard Max Kaiser scream down the TV at me to tell me to buy Bitcoin. And if I didn't buy Bitcoin, I was an idiot. So I went a wee bit deeper into that, and I remember watching a particular video by a guy called Andreas Antonopoulos on YouTube, and it's just him sitting around like a table. They're all out for something to eat, and he's just talking about Bitcoin, and it blew my mind. And I was like, right, I'm going straight home and I'm buying some Bitcoin. So at the time, you couldn't buy it on, like, well, not that I knew about, but you couldn't buy it on an exchange. I had to go on this
Mm.
thing called local Bitcoins and do bank transfers and escrow and message people and stuff. But at the time, Bitcoin was £75, right? And
Wow.
I was just holding it. And I kind of forgot about it, to be honest. I was just holding it, then it just rocketed. And I was like, get me out. This is where I sell, you know? Um, and then I just wanted to know, okay, so this is easy. Just buy when it's low and sell when it's high, you know? How
Mm.
hard could this be? I want to do this again.
Mhm.
So that's what got me into trading. So for a long time, it's only been like crypto, shit coins, all that sort of stuff. But forex has only been like the last, not even 2 years, not even 2 years. So yeah,
Okay, so what made you kind of make that shift? How did you find out about more specifically forex?
it was hearing a lot of people talking about it, and I seen, like, I had no clue about MT4, nothing. Like, I didn't know what a pip was. All I knew was, you know, Bybit or Binance and how to
Yeah.
execute trades on that. Didn't know anything. Um, But I just thought, Bitcoin is really good for swing trading and for spot and hedging. So that's basically all I do. I rarely even look at it now. But I don't know. It seemed to be, probably a wrong assumption on my part, but it seemed to be the more professional route to go. To be a bit,
Mhm.
um, that's it. That's why.
Okay, cool. Did you go to like any type of forex educators, or did you just take what you knew from trading crypto
Yeah,
and
yeah.
implemented that in the same kind of way?
I, Pretty much the exact same way I trade crypto, I trade forex. So
Okay.
what I done was, like, it's this is over the course of years. Like, I just started off and learn about EMS and learn about support and
Okay.
resistance and all that sort of stuff, and then Wyckoff and Fibonacci and
Yeah.
VWAP, and over the years, right? And then I had no real way of how can I combine all of this to make sense of it. Some days I'm trading VWAP, some days was trading EMA crossovers, other days was support and resistance. Didn't have a clue what it was at. Like, I got burned bad in crypto when I started trading it.
Oh.
So, like, my first my first account, I remember putting like 20 grand into the crypto account. It was gone. It was practically a transaction for a liquidation email. It happened that fast. It was just gone. And I remember, like, I put, like, all I knew back then, I didn't know anything about leverage or anything. I just thought, Bitcoin looks good to drop here. max leverage, this sell, walk up the stairs, check the phone, 3 grand gone. I was like, what is happening here? So that was like a real eye opener, but I loved it. It stuck around, and it seems to have paid off. But with learning it, I then came across a guy that kind of solidified it all for me. There's a group called Chart Champions, a guy called Daniel, and watching him, like he was just going over like everything that I was already really familiar with, like the concepts and Fibonacci and support resistance and VWAP and all that sort of stuff. But what he was doing was he was combining it all, and it just made a lot more sense. Everything just started to click. So just watching him apply all of these principles, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. So I wasn't in that group that long, maybe like 6 months to a year, but just watching him, I was like, right, I've got what I need here, and then I just went from there. So
Okay. Going to kind of like a mindset perspective, is there anything that you still find challenging about trading?
I know that this may sound a wee bit big-headed, but I honestly don't. I
Okay.
really don't. Like, it's not like I've just come off the back of potentially, well, I think it was like the greatest 4 months of trading I've ever done in my life,
Wow.
right? In terms of planning the trade and watching it all play out and executing like really well and stuff. It just seemed all like you couldn't miss. Like that period, that was like the longest period that's ever happened to me. And then all of a sudden, I've just come off like 10 days of like not having a notion what's going on here. And on my bespoke funded account, -6%, right? Negative
Wow.
6%. I've now come up out of that this week, and I'm now roughly something like -2 at the moment. So
That's
I'm happy with that.
amazing.
But that was kind of like at no point did I ever think that like I was annoyed at it, but it doesn't it's not something that I dwell on for very long. Like once I get up off this seat, I'm done with it. I'll just come back and we just go again. I don't really have issues with like the discipline aspect or the psychological aspect of trading. Um, I know that seems to be a massive area for some people, but it's just not something that affects me greatly at all.
hmm
Yeah.
Okay, that to be honest, that's completely different to obviously what I hear from most of the people that I speak to. Most people can usually kind of draw on something that is in some way holding them back, and I think people always have something because maybe they think that they're supposed to. So because it's so much of a norm of like people dealing with FOMO and greed and different aspects of challenging with trading, do you think that because there's such a notion out there of like trading psychology at the moment, do you think people kind of fall into a bit of like a victim mindset of like they kind of have to feel some type of negative or pullback when it comes to trading?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect assessment. I think that's exactly what it is, but
hmm
for a lot of it. And I also think a lot of the advice that I see is counterproductive for the most part.
hmm
Not all of it, but a lot of it. Because I have studied hypnosis and I worked as a developmental change
Oh,
coach for a number of years.
okay.
So that was a massive area for me. And just to put a wee bit of context to that, hobby of mine was to perform magic, kind of a la
Nice.
Darren Brown style. So it felt like the natural progression for me to add hypnosis into the performance piece. So I've done like my stage show and corporate events and private events and all that sort of stuff and festivals. And inevitably, after you perform something to do with hypnosis, someone will walk up and say, "Could that thing help me with whatever?"
Yeah.
And I would always just, palm it off, say, "Yes, it's a wonderful thing. You could look into it and stuff." But I was never interested in the therapeutic side of it until it just kept on happening and happening and happening. I thought, okay, let's look into this. And then you get dived into, how and why the mind works and all that sort of good stuff. And then I did open up a practice where I was assisting people overcoming fears, phobias, anxieties, addiction, like predominantly smoking addiction and stuff. And it was great. I did love it, but it was so draining. It was so draining.
No.
So yeah. But it was massively rewarding, but it just wasn't for me. Right. Um, so yeah, so I think a lot of the advice that I see getting put out there by people who call themselves like trading coaches or whatever, and this not I don't want to throw shade on anyone. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that I like something that people will say like recommend a lot is that you should journal your trades. You should journal not just the logging of data, but you should journal how you feel before, during, and after the trade and stuff. And that just seems to have been something that everyone assumes to be the case and something that you need to do. But it's not. It's most certainly not the case because, like, and there's been countless studies have shown this. Like, the most popular one is by a psychologist called James Pennebaker. And he took a group of people that all suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. And he got them all just to write out their experience and then come back and write out their experience. And then they've done that for some time. And they found that, yes, it was helpful for some people, but it wasn't helpful for others. So they wanted to find what is the distinction that made this helpful for these people and not everyone else. And the result was that it came down to the language that the people were using. So the people who found benefit, they were never reliving the same moment, or they were never writing down or documenting their experience using the same adjectives or anything like that. They were always changing the experience. Whereas opposed to the people who didn't find it beneficial, they were just writing the same stuff over and over and over and over and over again, just which is in essence, I think that's more like solidifying the issue. So I think that's going to be that's what's going to happen with a lot of people who are journaling their trades. I guarantee if you were to look over someone's journal, and they're probably using the same language, the same issues, and they're just repeating it over and over and over again. But because they're putting pen to paper and they're committing to writing out this journal, they think it's beneficial when in fact it's likely going to be to their detriment. And it's not going to be helpful at all.
Would you say that that is from like more of a manifesting aspect? Like, I tend to journal more of my life. So when it comes to trading, and this is only recently as well, I've never been a journaler. So it's only been recently that I've actually been journaling my trades. Okay. And here and there, I'll write down what I feel. But when it comes to actual journaling, I tend to use it from like a gratitude and affirmation perspective of like manifesting. So would you say that people writing down, obviously, those negative thoughts of obviously it's going to be negative, putting that pen to the paper, is that kind of like bringing that to more to life, so to speak?
With the affirmation side of it, definitely that's like, I think that's massively beneficial. But what I'm saying is, like, when people are documenting how they feel before, during, and after a trade, it's more like whenever we are, how would you put it? So the cycle of, like, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, but the cycle of a particular issue that someone has, it's got like some key components. The number one is the belief. So the belief will then feed into the imagination. The imagination will then change the physiology. The physiology is your essentially the way you think about the thing and the way you act toward the thing. And then that feeds back into the belief system, which then becomes this perpetuating cycle. So in the moment of like all our lives, even right now, me and you talking right now, this is essentially all predetermined behavior that we have, right? But the secret to the whole thing, and I think this is where hypnosis and stuff comes in to play, is that we have a toolkit which I think is underutilized, and that is the imagination. So we can literally change our perspective of reality just by imagining something. And hypnosis is, in my opinion, the best way to amplify that whole experience. So if someone was to imagine that they're running a 100-meter sprint, right, and they can visualize that process, the same muscle twitch fibers will fire up at the exact same time as if they were in that race itself. And the visual cortex will fire up the exact same way it would if they were running that race, but just less so. So essentially, the way in which we behave towards things is based upon our, how would you say that? It's based upon the way in which we have assigned meaning to something in the past, right? So I'm trying to think of an example. So basically, how would you get into this without going too deep? It's kind of like,
go deep.
It's not only that, because I do enjoy talking about this, but then, it's kind of like we're doing this interview and I wanted to see if I could provide something of value out of this. But the way in which we assign a meaning to something will predetermine our future behavior towards that thing, right? So as I said, me and you talking right now, this is nothing more than a reflexive response based upon all of my history and all of everything that I've ever done up until this time is the thing that's causing this conversation to unfold. But because we have our imagination, we can essentially time travel. So we can go back in time using hypnosis to go back to a particular point. That could be if someone wants to overcome addiction or an issue public speaking or whatever it may be. And you can literally recreate the meaning of that event. So, and in doing so, what you're doing by that is you are then increasing the likelihood of that meaning being changed for the future. So the next time they encounter that same experience, they're going to respond to it differently. And that's essentially what hypnosis does. So if someone came to me for whatever it may have been, the protocol essentially was I wanted to fire up that imagination. I want to fire up the belief system, and I want to get them into that loop, that feedback loop that they're in the moment. So this takes someone who public speaking was a big one. So if someone had an issue with public speaking, you could literally just talk them through the process, get them to relive the moment as much as they can. They're firing up all those visual networks and everything's like as if they're in that moment. And then you can address it in a different way. You can not just reassociate it with something else by saying, oh, like you associate this now with calmness or anything, but you can just become like, you can just become neutral in it. Mm-hmm. And then you can work on it over time, and eventually at some point that should then be eradicated, if that makes sense.
Okay, cool.
It sounds like a bit of a waffle there, but yeah.
No, I think it needed that explanation.
I hope it was an explanation.
Yeah, that was a great explanation. So hypnosis, that is super cool, and I've never ever spoken to a hypnotist before.
Right.
What does that entail? Like, is it real? Because I know a lot of people watching are going to be thinking, yeah, okay, whatever, like, don't believe that. How did you get into it? Obviously, you said through the magic, but like, is there like a hypnotist school? Like, what happens?
Well, because I was already in like the world of magic, you know, you've got all your secret forums and all that sort of stuff, but it wasn't too hard to find someone who could show me the ropes, so to speak. But you would be surprised at how incredibly easy it is. Like it's ridiculously easy. Like I know I could teach you to become a hypnotist in probably an hour.
No way.
Yeah, no joke. And because for the most part, the job's kind of already done for you because you've got this set up. And once you introduce yourself as the hypnotist, everyone's got these assumptions already made of what hypnosis is. No, they assume that you're this Svengali mind manipulator type of person, and that plays in well to the likelihood of it being incredibly effective. Mm-hmm. But it can work for people who are just as resilient or just as not willing to participate. There's ways in which you can get around it, but it's not that hard. And because the reason it's not that hard for everything I just said about the imagination, that's literally all it is. It's about engaging someone's imagination so much so that they are unable to differentiate the difference between what's real and what's not. Like on my YouTube and stuff, I've got some videos of me like sticking people's hands to tables and stuff, but like their hands are actually not stuck to the table. It's just that they've accepted that belief so much. That's the cycle. So that's the belief. The belief is set up in like that's what I would use, like you use like language and full body communication to play the role of the hypnotist, and I would guide them in that process. That's all I am. I'm facilitating the process. I'm not doing anything like secretive or manipulative or anything like that. I'm just guiding them through the process, and I've kind of shifted their belief. I'm feeding into the imagination. We can do a test. Once that sticks, so once they feel that they can't lift their hand off the table, boom, they're in, because then it's verified, it's validated everything. So that feeds back into the belief, back into the imagination, and then you can literally go from anywhere from that. So from once someone's hand is stuck to a table, you can stick it to their head. They can't speak. They forget their name, mental stuff. But it's all predicated on the imagination. And that's what I think is the secret little nugget to consciousness. I think that's like the gift that we have that differentiates us from other species out there. Like we have the ability, as I said, like literally time travel, go back in time, relive in a moment, and then change it, and then ultimately change our future behavior towards those things. It's mental. But I love it. And like at the start, I didn't believe it either. I just thought it would have looked cool because it's quite theatrical. And like people also assume that hypnosis involves some sort of like trance-like state,
Yeah.
And that's not true at all either. Like every person I've ever worked with, they're all fully awake, fully alert, eyes open, and they're communicating with me the entire time. So because there was this notion that you had to go into this deep state of trance and stuff, but it's not true because we live in a state of hypnosis all the time. We've got our own feedback loops towards everything, towards trading, towards how we speak to people. If someone shouts at us, and we can interpret that in certain ways. We all have different responses to different stimulus. So it's insane. I love it.
That is crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So with when you do your shows, that seems like it's like quite straightforward hypnotism. If you've got someone that's dealing with an addiction that is like dated back years, is that more of like a gradual process, or can that just be like unfolded in one session?
For some people, one session, boom, they're done, right? For a lot of people, it's going to require more. Like take something like, and there's obviously there's more than one way to skin the cat. There's like a multitude of different ways in which you could treat someone with an addiction. In my opinion, the greatest way is a book by Alan Carr, and not Chatty Man, Alan Carr, the Alan Carr Stop Smoking.
Okay.
Right? Stop Smoking. I think it's called Stop Smoking Now. That book is phenomenal. Just go on to Amazon and read the reviews and how successful it's been. And he's used that same approach for addiction and for weight loss to the same effect. And the basic structure of that whole book is that it starts off with some education, and then it literally barrages the person in the most eloquent way for the remainder of the book. And what he does is he educates them on the topic of whatever he's talking about. And then he, like for the smoking one, he reframes it as calling it a trap. And then he makes the reader feel so stupid that by the end of the book, if they're going to continue on smoking, they'd have to be an idiot. And it's phenomenal how he's done it in such it's kind of under the radar the way in which he's done it, but it's one of the greatest books ever written, I think.
No way.
Insofar as being able to achieve, like, have that high of a success rate is just crazy. And it's such a simple approach, and it works for so many people.
That is crazy. Like I said, I've never spoken to anyone that does this kind of thing. That book I've never heard of. I've never heard of anything like that. Like, this is like a whole new world. It's so interesting. I could talk about this all day, but I'm like, okay, right, we'll get back to the trading now. So, reflecting on your trading career, obviously you've been in this kind of world for a long time. Do you have like a pivotal moment or experience that significantly kind of shaped your approach to trading?
I think my progression has definitely been more of a slow burner. Because it wasn't like I would dip in and out of trading for so many years. I would learn about a few things and I check the charts, and I didn't. It's been more gradual. The thing that probably had the most impact, like the aha moment, was that combination of all of, like, because the assumption I always had was, you've got to pick one or two of these ways of viewing the markets and then just hone in on that, master that one thing. And because now I use like a variety of different ways of looking at the markets, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's the combining of so many different principles. And that's not something like a lot of people here talk about. You can trade Wyckoff, you can have support and resistance, you can have VWAP, you can have TPO, volume profile, the whole lot. You can combine it all together. Some people will say it's possibly overkill, or some people will, just to clarify, like, that's not to be misinterpreted as me wanting to understand every single nuance in the market moves. I just want to identify key areas where institutional buyers and sellers are likely wanting to do business at.
Yeah.
And the way in which I do it, like, because the thing is that what I can say for certain is that when you hear, like, we can see all their interviews, we can read them about them in books. What are they doing? They're using support and resistance, they're using Fibonacci, they're using TPO, volume profile, using all these things combined. So if I can get a key area where I can get a couple of those confluences all around that key price area, then that's where I want to get involved. And then the way in which I get involved, I've pretty much got around 3 entry models that I would use.
Okay.
And that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, do you want to get into it and you can show us a little bit about your trading style?
Sure. Yeah. So let me just share my screen.
Absolutely. And if you want to just talk us through what kind of sessions you trade, if there was anything that you avoid.
So what I like to do is I start every Sunday night, and I'm kind of like a sucker for deleting everything off my chart come the weekend, and then I'll sit down, I'll go, okay, let's start again from fresh, let's see what we can do. And this week has been, after coming off that terrible period that I had, this has been quite a good week. So let me see, can you see this if I switch screens? Or
Yeah.
are you still looking?
Yeah.
Are you looking at? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got my this is my plan that I made out on Sunday.
Okay.
And I was basically saying, like, I've got an A+ setup around. Can't even see it myself. So maybe we'll just go. Maybe we'll just go into it. So another thing, for the 2 years that I've been kind of focusing on forex, what I was doing was I was combining different pairs. I was trialing out different pairs. So I went through pound US dollar, euro USD, pound JPY, euro JPY, euro pound, Aussie dollar, Swiss franc. Those are the main ones. And what I was doing was I was just mapping it out like I would normally trade, and I wanted to see which one performed best in accordance to my approach on the market. And I've only settled on euro US dollar for like the last, I'd say, 5 months.
Okay.
And I haven't traded anything else but euro USD since then.
Okay. To be honest, I know that a lot of people that I've spoken to recently, people seem to just be focusing on 1 or 2 pairs now. And I think that is so different from when I originally came into the industry, which was like you kind of analyze all the pairs and then find whatever ones have a particular setup for that week or day. But now it's like people are just focusing on their one pair, which I love to see it.
Yeah, I definitely think it's advantageous. I think you've got more of an edge in the market, especially with risk management and stuff. It's focusing on one pair, like your likelihood of lasting in the game for much longer is increased, in my opinion. That's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I map out my plan, and let me see if I can move this screen so I put you over there. Oh, there you go. So the way in which I do it, right, I've kind of like a formula. So because I'm looking to combine so many different concepts, I don't want to ever like dupe myself by forcing confluences, like forcing things in certain areas. So I kind of start off with a blank chart, and I map out my horizontal support and resistance, the monthly, weekly, and the daily, for the most part. And I measure those from candle body closes. And then I go through like supply and demand. I also I like to do supply and demand zones. I like to work out my previous day value areas, previous day value area high, low, and point of control. I like to map out the naked point of controls, and we can see them all here. And then my high time frame Fibonacci resistance and support, and all that sort of stuff. So I do it all separately. So once I mark out my support and resistance, I put it into a folder, turn it off, supply and demand, then turn them off, and do it like that. So then after I've done all that, I can then start to turn everything back on and see what stacks where. And that's essentially what I do to find the key levels that I want to get involved at. So my weekly plan is probably going to look like chaos here. Cool. So that's essentially what I done on Sunday, and then I come to the markets on Monday, and I want to see how the market opened and what Asia session did and stuff like that. So my preferred trading times is quite wide. I'm happy. I'm always at the computer come 7:30 in the morning, and I'm happy to take a trade from around 7:30, but preferably from London Open at 8 up until 4 or 5. I'm happy to get involved. So And especially if I have, like, in this example, this is what I would categorize as a really high probability trade setup for me. So I had to take it, regardless of what time of the day it hit. I was getting involved. So let me see if we can just recap this. I've got so much stuff on here now. Turn off that weekly plan. Turn off this. And these are like my two templates that I use. This is like the session volume profile, so I use it for the whole day. Right?
Okay.
And these are just for each day. These red lines are the naked pointing controls, and this is where my entry is from on Tuesday. And I took this on my bespoke account.
Okay, cool.
So this is that's today's trade, and then I'm still in this one here. I'm still holding this. I'm holding this over the weekend because I'm still expecting higher prices for Euro USD.
Okay.
So let's go. So I'll have to put on, like, I'll just break it down without having to refer to the weekly plan. So you've got a copy of it there. Hopefully you can see it a bit better. But what I was seeing in here was this. The first thing was having this clear 4-hour demand zone.
Mm-hmm.
And what was nice about this is that it comes down, it sweeps these fractal lows to the left, and then it breaks structure to the upside. And that's nice. But I wouldn't just look to take an entry off that alone. I need to get a couple of other factors in there. There was also a monthly level of an SR level in here as well on the monthly. And we also had naked point of control, as you can see here. And what was really nice about this, like once I seen this, and obviously I couldn't have seen this on Sunday because I didn't have all of this information yet, but this naked point of control was bang on the 786 retracement level. When I see that in that 4-hour zone, I was like, this is a buy all day, because in order for the market to hold the structure in the higher time frames, this is going to be like the extremity of that move. So the 3 entry models that I have is essentially one of them was actually shown to me by Alb, who's also he's associated with Bespoke.
Okay, Alb, yeah.
Yeah, I signed up to his OnlyFans, and then he sent me some pics, and then he sent me some charts. He sent me some charts as well.
Love that. You've even got his banter.
Yeah. So one of the, I've got a wee slight variation on what he had shown me, but that's on today's trade. So, but very briefly for this one, because I identified this as being a key area of support, and if it didn't hold, we were going much lower, and I have a clear invalidation. Break this low, and the idea is completely wrong. So, one of the ways in which I enter, which is using for this entry here, it's all predicated on how price comes into that level. Like I want to see super, super, super aggressive moves into a support level, like massive bearish candles. And this whole candle here, it came down, like this was looking not good. And once my alert went off, I didn't even know where I was in this level. Whenever I just went on to, once my alert went off, jumped on the laptop, and I just hit buy, because I seen it come down so aggressively. Like I've identified over the years that if I've identified a key support area and price is running into that aggressively, that's a buy opportunity all day long. I don't need to wait for an entry pattern or anything like that. I've got a clear invalidation. I'm expecting higher prices, and we can discuss that as well, and why I'm expecting it to go higher. But once I seen that, I was just like, I'm hitting buy. There's my stop loss. My target is up here, and I'm still in this trade from Wednesday.
Okay.
So that's basically that one. Yeah, so we had stacked a lot of things there. And then today was more like a continuation trade where I was happy to add. Now I did get into another trade, but I took it on different accounts. I couldn't do it on my bespoke account because of the drawdown that I was in. So my risk parameters wouldn't let me, I couldn't add and have more risk on the table there. But today, what I was able to do is if I entered into this trade, this entry went break even on the bespoke account. So I'll see this. So this is the entry of today. And if we put on the previous day value areas, and this is something I change every day. I know previous day value area, high, low. Let me turn this here off. So you can see.
Yeah.
My entry was on the 15M. And it was this, close of this here, bearish candle here. I had a buy stop above that, trigger me in, and it went, and I closed this here one for just over 3.4R.
Love that.
today. So the reason for this one was that I've obviously got the context of seeing the trade idea from Sunday play out, tag me in, and then go. And I'm still expecting my overall target to get hit. And I'll explain what that target is in just a moment. But I was happy to get involved here. So the next entry model that I like to use a lot is a variation of what Albert showed me. So basically what we're doing is, you're marking out your 15-minute range, right? But for me, the key criteria to this is it's essentially a Wyckoff spring and an upthrust, right? So in this example, it's a Wyckoff spring. And I want to get my horizontal line. So I mark out the low of my 15-minute range with a horizontal line. And then it's important that I can look back to recent price action and identify that that's been key resistance at some point. All right, so maybe if we throw this in the hourly, be a bit cleaner. We can see that this was clearly resistance, and we had a nice rejection down, sweeping this fractal here, and then we had a break up, which broke market structure here.
Yep.
Then the next step that I need is that's where the 15-minute range low was formed. This was also flipped into support. So essentially all it is a SR flip, right? And I want to see that. Preferably, I would like to see it twice on the time frame that I'm entering in on, and which in this example happened just the once, so it wasn't ideal, but I was happy to take it, given the context of me still expecting higher prices. And we were also around the previous day's point of control, so that was the key factor. So whenever I seen us get this rejection into the point of control, but we've swept this fractal low, that is the SR flip. Here's our resistance, flip it into support, get a deviation, buy stop above the high. And I put my stop here. Normally, I would kind of prefer to put my stop just below the low of the candle that gets me in. But because I had the 786 on the previous day value area low, I gave it a wee bit more breathing space because I was confident in the trade setup. I took that today and I closed out at 3.4R. And that is essentially that one. And like I'm looking for higher because I did take a couple of shorts on Tuesday. And the reason for that is because if I turn all this off, EU is at pretty high time frame Fibonacci resistance, and it's at the 618 at the moment. So we put this on the weekly. And then we turn those negative point controls off. Here's the value areas off. And basically just a fib from this high to this low. You can see we're in this 618, and that's where we got that rejection from on Tuesday, I believe. But because we also have my favorite Fibonacci level to get involved at is the .702, which is this green line here. So because I can see it is around that value area high of this entire range. So I've taken this from the low of September last year. This is where the vast majority of that volume. Here's the value area high, point of control, value area low. I've got Fibonacci confluence up there. I'm expecting in my opinion, that's the most likely place for price to want to go before retracing. Because if I was a seller right now with, a large capital to play, that's kind of the areas where I would want to get involved, because not only will I have a good entry, I have a clear invalidation, which will be, stop will be above that high, but it also lines up nicely. So the thing that I do correlate trading EU with is obviously the Dixie. This chart looks like a mess. But what I have here is the inverse to that. So I have the 618 on a naked point of control coming in at around 102. So even though, like today, we have seen a nice bounce, this the kind of like thick black line here is, there was a nice rejection off that monthly. And that was also confluent with the long that I'd taken on Wednesday. And then we had this nice reaction off this. This line here is the yearly open. But I wasn't convinced that it was going to hold, because it made a lot more sense insofar as if I was a buyer here, where would I want to get involved? And I want to get involved down at this high time frame 618 on a naked point of control at the very least. So that's why I'm also expecting higher prices on EU at the moment. So I'm still in that trade. I'm like, it's not something that I do often, but I'm holding it over the weekend. Normally I'm in and out on the same day, but on this occasion I was happy to hold it.
Okay, I love that. It's crazy as well, and I think I say this in every podcast that I do. It's crazy how so many people trade in so many different ways, but when people break down their charts to me, I can see it, but from my perspective of how I would trade. So the last trade that you showed me, I could see that it's a clear The support is retesting the resistance, but I can also see that there's an inverse head and shoulders formation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's crazy how there's so many different types of trading, and you can see it in so many different ways, but the concept is still the same, and price is still going to play out in exactly the
Exactly.
same way.
Yeah. And like that's so true. Like at the end of the day, all we're trading is our own beliefs on the market. Like that's what like one of my main like someone that I absolutely love and I watched every single one of his every piece of content he's ever put out. He's just died recently as well. And he's local to where I live. His name is David Paul.
Okay.
And his lectures that he's also he would have done a lot of lectures with Tom Hugard and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Hugard, after he died, just released like his last lecture he did with him, and it's on
Yep.
YouTube. It's phenomenal. It's so good.
Right.
And he said, ultimately we're all trading our belief of what we think,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. So you'll see your setup and I'm seeing mine and somebody else is seeing an entry at a fair value gap, that's,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah, exactly.
that's just what it is. So, but if it makes sense to me, then I think if I view the markets in the way I like to view them, I can approach it with a lot higher conviction. So
Absolutely.
I'm happy. Like with the previous trade where I went long, like that was looking bearish as you can't swear in this now, can you know?
Yeah, carry on.
I was looking bearish as fuck on that move down. But I know that, and I know we're coming in at support level, and I'm just, I've seen it so many times. I've got such high conviction on it, mapped it out from Sunday night, going, if this hits this level, I'm a buyer, and there's no two ways about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because I believe so strongly in the technical analysis. Whereas, I like maybe, right, just throwing it out there, but maybe the market is random. Maybe it is a random walk. Maybe that theory is correct. I've no way of disproving it entirely, but I don't think my performance would be the same if I had that belief system. I
Yeah.
believe that the technical analysis, the horizontal lines that I'm putting on the chart means something. Means something to me at least. May not mean something for everyone, but whatever technical analysis that you gravitate towards that makes the most sense to you is the thing that you should hone in on, and that should be the thing that you use to execute your trades, because everything I'm doing is ultimately creating, in my mind, what I think I'm doing could be completely wrong, but what I think I'm doing is I'm lining up my areas of interest with what I believe the institutions and large players
Yep.
are looking to do as well, and I want to capitalize on that. I could be completely wrong in that thesis, but it's shown in my statistics that it's working for you at least. So just keep on doing it. Like one of the ways in which I view the market is probably taken from the Bitcoin days, where I would plan out my day or plan out my week, expecting what's the move here that's likely going to wreck the most amount of people, and then I go with that. That's like my highest conviction trade, and wrecking the most amount of people on the Wednesday's trade was the way in which it moved into that area. Like it moved in so aggressively. I was like, yes, let's go, hit buy straight away. But so that's kind of, and that may be one of my biggest downfalls as a trader. That may be the thing that I don't know if I'll ever be able to overcome it. And that is playing the role of the contrarian sometimes just for contrarian's sake. Just because, maybe because if I review the losses that I've taken over the last, I think it was about 7 or 8 days or something. Like I was short in EU, and I knew, like, because I would record videos of me going over the charts and making up my plans as well, and I have them all filed away. And I was watching back over those, and I was like, what were you doing? Like, what were you thinking? And I think it was because I honestly I don't really know why I was doing it. I mean, I think there was some external factors outside of trading, like the lack of sleep has been horrendous, but the kids sick and stuff the last couple of weeks, maybe like 4 hours a night for most nights. But I still made that decision to sit down at the computer come 7:30 and push the button.
Yeah.
So it's on me regardless. So I'm always dubious of making those kind of excuses. But I can't help but recognize maybe it had played some role in the poor performance. But it's just something I'll sit with and dwell on for a while. But
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that, especially this week as well. Same with me. I trade. Well, I'm so used to trading EJ but now I've kind of slowly transitioned to GU. So I had a massive losing streak on EJ, and I was like, you know what? Let me go back to what I started with, which was GU. So I've been trading GU for the last probably the last month or so, and I have been smashing it. Past challenges like just so easy, like 1 or 2 trades I'm past. And this week I got a new live account.
Brilliant.
My first trade lost, went straight into, I think it was 3% drawdown over 2 positions. Managed to get myself out, I was in 2% profit, and I was like, right, okay, leave that, just take your profit into, like, it would have been in like another week, and you've got a nice little bonus for Christmas. Don't be greedy. But I think was it yesterday? It was yesterday. I woke up again. I hadn't had a great sleep because the kids have been ill. But I looked at my phone and I thought, I can see a setup there. You know what? I'm going to take it. But I know that I've been analysing GU for longs this week. What did I do? I shorted. And I don't know what it was. I do know. I was waiting for a 61.8% level to be hit on a retracement, and it hadn't been hit. So I expected price to come back down again, tap that before making a move higher.
Yeah.
So I was so stuck in it needs to hit that level before going higher that I was like, no, I'm going to sell. I didn't check news properly. I realised that we had EU news, but again, because I was tired, I was just half-arsing it. Didn't realise that we had GU news at 9:30. So I looked at my phone. I was in a bit of drawdown throughout the morning. By the time I got to my daughter's nursery, I was back to break even. Was waiting outside. She goes into nursery at 9:30. Was waiting outside. It got to 9:30. Looked at my phone. My account had, like, it was closed, and I was like, "What? Like, what? I don't know what happened." I looked, and GU had a massive 50 pip spike to the upside.
Gee.
Completely taken me out. And yeah, so that was all because I was so determined that price had to get to that level before making a move higher, even though I knew that it was bullish anyway. And it's painful.
Yeah, it's painful. Like, and it's not an easy game. Like, it is
No,
not easy by any stretch of the imagination. Is this game
no.
easy? It's crazy. But I mean, like, equally, like today, I knew PMI was today. I wasn't too concerned about it at all, but I was convinced that it was a half one. It wasn't a quarter of 3. Where I got half one from, I don't know. But I was just convinced. Oh, half one. I may go back and just monitor this. You know, we continually make stupid errors. So I think
Yeah.
it ultimately comes down to, like, I was negative 6%. I can't tell you, like, that was abysmal. I don't even know how I ended up there. But thankfully, I'm out of it now. We're in the week -2. So, but it's, I mean, it is what it is.
Mhm.
It is what it
That's it.
is.
Literally.
It is what it is.
Literally, that is all you can take from trading.
Yeah,
Sometimes, like, it is what it is. We move
yeah,
on to the
yeah.
next.
We move, and that's it. Yeah, and that's kind of like that. That's why I think I think this may be coming from the hypnosis days, but I kind of like spatially anchor all of my emotional aspect of trading at this desk.
Mhm.
So it happens here, it stays here. It doesn't leave the once I walk through the door, it's gone. And I'm not thinking
Okay.
about trading at all. Unless the alerts go off. So I stick the alerts on, whack the volume up full, and I walk away. But
Okay.
so yeah, I don't I think that's possibly why when you asked earlier about the discipline or the psychological component, I think that's
Mhm.
why. Like, I've kind of accepted that it happens here. It doesn't happen anywhere else. Like, I don't trade from my phone.
Okay.
I don't. I just a decision that I made. And I was like, just so I could have that. But this is the space and where I trade, and
Mhm.
it doesn't happen anywhere else. So yeah,
I actually really like that. And you know what? I think that is something after what happened last week. I think that is something that I am going to take personally into next week, because I trade from my phone. Everyone who follows me knows I am a phone trader.
oh,
And sometimes I allow trading to get into every aspect of my life. So if I've taken a win, then like I'll be really happy for the day. If I've taken a loss, then I am in a bad mood. And I think it is because it's just on my phone. My phone is on me all the time. I can check the charts whenever I want to.
Yeah.
But like you say, you have that emotional anchor to your desk. So whatever happens there stays there.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense why psychologically it is so easy for you.
I honestly think that is the case. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm like, I may go off to I take the kids to the forest quite often, you know, and I get an alert on my phone. I'm going to check it. You know, I want to see what's happening. So I'm not completely void of checking my phone or anything like that. But I don't execute on empty. Like I've done it. I just don't. I don't think it. I just don't think it's advantageous for me to be trading from my phone. I just prefer it. I also prefer the clunkiness of, you know, moving a mouse and hitting buttons and stuff, and it's more tactile or something. Feels more real. Feels like I'm actually doing something. If I'm just swiping a screen, it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, you know what? I get that. I feel like, and also as well, I feel like because it's from your phone and it's just so accessible, maybe we kind of take trading for granted, and the money that we make, we take it so for granted because it's just there on our phone. Like we don't really, it's not like a job. Whereas if you're sitting at a desk, that's more like a job, and you kind of appreciate it more. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I think the biggest allure of trading is because it really does like burrow its way into like the most base of human instincts, where you can because throughout the whole of human history, like the whole thing seems to have been about acquiring the most amount of resources for the littlest effort possible. And ultimately, like when people come into trading and they find, well, all you have to do, like you see these massive wins, and what's the criteria to do that? It's to push a button. Everyone can push a button, you know. Everyone can, you know, learn a strategy and just push buttons. And if only it was that easy. It's not.
Literally.
It's not that easy.
If only. So what has your experience been like with Bespoke in particular? And are you funded anywhere else as well?
No. The plan was like I completed my Darwin X recently and stuff, like, but so I've got my first allocation of that coming. I think it's next month or something. I don't really
cool.
know. But the plan was that I would take that 2-year period and I wanted to find, okay, which pairs work best for me. I thought it was going to be like 2 or 3, but it turns out it's EU for me. And then I wanted to, you know, I've only been trading it for 5 months, and it's kind of like this has been the plan. So come next year, like, because there's always been that urge that I wanted to scale up incredibly fast. I want to go for the highest possible challenges. I want to max fund it across all these firms, but there's possibly that's my own, I don't know, maybe that's not the best way to go about it. Maybe I should be doing it. I don't know. But I think in the long run, it's going to be much more beneficial for me to recognize that I've taken all these necessary smaller steps. Come next year, you can guaranteed I'm going like that max, whatever the max funding is available, every prop firm's getting hit next year.
Love that.
It's happening. But that's always been the plan, you know. So I haven't even been doing forex for like 2 years. So I think now's the time.
Okay, cool. I like that. So what has your experience overall been like with Bespoke?
Phenomenal. Like you see some things like on Twitter and stuff, right? Like I can say insofar as trade execution, flawless. Trade spreads, especially in EU, it's unreal. And any issues I've ever had, jump on Discord, customer support, boom, it's solved. You know, the only issue was, you know, the whole deal thing, and there was a delay in payouts and stuff, but is what it is. But everything else has just been top notch. So I've not a bad word to say about them.
I love that. I love that. It's so nice to hear. You know, we see some of the things on Twitter and people kind of feed into it. So it's nice to actually talk to people who are experiencing what it is actually like to trade with Bespoke, and not just from people online.
That's so true. Like, I mean, as I said, trade execution, unreal. Trade spreads, I don't even know where they're getting their spreads from. That EU spreads is ridiculous. Like, even if I'm getting stopped out of a trade and I've come in and I've seen it, like, it's just, okay, it should have stopped me out by now, surely, you know? But EU obviously is, you know, the best in terms of spread, but it's just
it is.
not a bad word to say at all.
Love that. We love that. So at the end of our interviews, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. So your question is from our last guest, which was Abdul. And your question is, what was your darkest time during prop trading and how did you pull yourself out of it? Now, I think you have kind of gone over that, but if not.
Yeah, it's probably been last week.
Yeah.
Like last week. And it was going into drawdown of 6% of not having a notion. Not only could I not pick a trade, I couldn't pick my nose. It was terrible performance overall. And you know, I don't know. I just like, right, it is what it is. Like, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm in drawdown. I just go to risk management then. That's not my job. That's risk management's job to get me out of it. Ironically, like you do think if I just kept my wrist the same, I had 4 good trades here, kind of thing. I definitely would have been in profit now. But stuck to risk management and just waited for the opportunities that I would have taken regardless. And yeah, I'm pretty much almost out of it. Like, so, and I'll get out of it. Like, I have no doubt in my mind it's going to happen, because if I go back and like, it's going to take a lot of losses before I lose a funded account. Because if I'm going like below -6, I'm down at 0.25%. At which point, I've still got how many trades to get it back up. So yeah, that's. I find comfort in knowing that my risk management is going to give me ample amount of opportunity to claw my way out of it if needs be. So I'm not stressed about it. And like, it's not because I'm like overly attached to the account or to the payouts that I've got and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I've obviously got personal and all that sort of stuff, but leave it to risk management. Solidify the risk management side of it and just keep on doing what you do. That's it. That's all I can do.
I love that. So what is your question for the next guest? Well, it has been lovely chatting to you. And
thank you very much. Same
definitely
to you.
One of the most interesting conversations that I've had, to say the least.
Oh, you're too kind.
No, I think it's so interesting. And I think your trading style as well is, if there is a complete professional way to day trading, then you definitely have it. I've never seen someone with folders of markups. I didn't even know TradingView did that.
What? Yeah, that's the object tree. I mean, it's a lifesaver.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely love that. But no, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I think people at home will definitely take a lot of value from not only the psychological aspect, but also from the trading aspect as well, because the way that you trade is so different to what we usually have on this podcast. So absolutely valuable, to say the least. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll speak to you again very soon.